This is a quick video for lesson 2 draw commands. And so if you take a look at the handout, you'll see the list of different things we'll be covering and then assignments to practice a little bit with some of these things. So as I scroll down, we'll just take a look at a couple of these in your assignment 4. We already drew a line, and we said, especially in this video, which is the flange bushing video, also in lesson 2, and in the first lesson, when you start the line tool, you can pick a point, pull your mouse to the right, and type in whatever distance you need, like 4, and enter. But another way of drawing a line is to use the coordinates. So if I start the line tool and I type in 0, 0 and enter, you can see that way over here someplace there's your 0, 0. So if I said, for instance, now for the second point 5, 5 and enter, then AutoCAD will go over 5 and up 5, over 5 in the X and up 5 in the Y. So that's why over here in the lesson you're drawing objects and using here the coordinate system to draw lines based on points. We also have an idea for drawing lines with angles, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here a little bit when you start to work with the polyline. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. The line and the polyline are very similar. The big difference is that the line, when you draw it, I'm going to go ahead and draw several lines that look like they're connected, but they're all separate. So the line is separate. The polyline, when you draw with the polyline, all of your objects are connected. So that's why when you use the rectangle command to draw a box or a square or a rectangle, it actually uses the polyline by default. It's all one piece. And I think we saw that in the last lesson also. So there it is there. And there are ways of using commands like explode, which I did use in this flange bushing video to explode the polyline. We can also use commands like PEdit, it's all one word in your command line, PEdit, to join these lines. So if you type in PEdit, select here the regular line. It says, do you want to turn it into one? Yes, I'll go ahead and press enter. And then there's join. And join will help us to select all of these objects and enter in order to get them back into all one line connected. So in this presentation, I'm going over some of these draw commands so that you are familiar with them before you start the assignment, which will bring you through these tools, and then a few more assignments to give you that extra practice. When we use straight coordinates, like I did with this line, I said 5, 5. But if you'd like to start at the last point that you ended up with, so let's say I wanted to start at the end of 5, 5, instead of starting in the full coordinate system, the full absolute coordinate system, now we're going to be working with points relative to where you were, where you're at. So that actually becomes a 0 point. So when you start the line, or the polyline in this case here, tool, you pick a point, and maybe you pick another point someplace, and now at this point where you ended that one, you type in the @ symbol, 1 less than 0, and enter. See, you're going over from that last point over 1 and at 0 degrees. So from that point, not from 0, 0, but from that point, if I type in at 1 less than, I don't know, 45. Let's do that as a practice for 45 degrees, and I press enter. See, we created a line that's 45 degrees direction. So in your handout, you're creating different lines that are at a distance of 1 from the last point that you were at, in a specific direction, like 180. I'd like to also show you a different way of drawing something at an angle. If you, at the bottom, want to use here the polar tracking angles, right now this drawing is set up, if you look at the arrow next to the 4th icon there, it's polar tracking. Click on the arrow next to it. You'll see that this drawing is set up to snap at increments of 45, 90, 135, and by default it's usually 90. So because it's already set up at 45, when I start the line command and I click a point, you see how the tracking vectors are going to snap at 0, 45 degrees, and 90, and all of the increments of 45. So here's 135, 180, and 225. So if you wanted to draw a line that's 45 degrees, you could, instead of typing in anything for the coordinates, just pull your mouse towards that direction and type in the distance. I'll type in 3 and enter. There's my line that's 3 inches in the 45 degree direction. Okay, just to get an idea of it, we talked about erase and polylines. You'll be experiencing working with circles again. An ellipse is up here. Underneath the rectangle command, you'll see that there are 3 different ways of drawing an ellipse. You can practice a little bit with that. We have all of these different ways of drawing an arc. My favorite lately is the start and direction. There's several different arcs based on the information that you have, but if you have a start point and an end point, and you know which way you want the direction of the arc to go, you can use this one, or I also use start and radius. If you already know the radius of the circle, you have a start point and an end point of that arc. In this example, it looks like you're going to create a 3-point arc using the coordinate system. Multilines are awesome because we can draw up to 14 different lines at one time, and the default is to use 2 lines. So if I type in ML for multiline and I click a point, here you see automatically I'm drawing 2 lines, and that's what this part of the handout brings you through. There's a whole discussion on this, because if I pull my mouse over and click and then pull my mouse down and click, you see how my corners are cleaned up automatically. And also when I double click on the multiline, I have all of these edit tools to close multilines that are crossing over each other with these open T's, for instance, or cleaning up the corners. So if I have another multiline here, I'm going to type in ML and enter, that goes across this one. I click, pull my mouse over and click. I can double click on the multiline, either one, to start the edit tools, and then maybe use an open T to select this multiline and then this multiline, and see how it opens those up. Usually when I use this as a tool, once I get all of those objects drawn, I usually use explode to explode the multiline, and then it goes back into individual pieces. Polygons are sometimes used here. They're underneath the rectangle command. If you just rest your pointer on the polygon tool, you'll see that there are 2 different ways of drawing a polygon. One is going to be inscribed, the other circumscribed, and that has to do with whether the radius is inside or outside of your polygon. You see how one goes to the corner of the polygon and the other one goes to the midpoint of the polygon. Your example is going to use the coordinates to draw it. Here's the rectangle command, and we also have the point command. We placed points when we used the divide tool last lesson, but in this lesson we're going to actually place them. The donut has an inside and an outside diameter, and you'll see that in assignment 4. This spline will help you to draw a line that's curved, and also at the end of the lesson there's a little bit of information here about working with layers. So assignment 4 would be experiencing a little bit of all of those draw commands, and then assignment 5 you can see that we have some fillets which we covered last lesson. Remember, with the fillet command you're creating this arc here, and you can use multiple and then you change the radius, and it looks like the radius is 0.25 here. It says it in the note. To get this open slot, which by the way this is 0.5 diameter for this drill, you can draw 2 circles once you use offset. Can you kind of get an idea now that we're working with these details that you can use offset to offset 0.63 and then use another offset to offset 1.63. Draw your circles that are 0.5 diameter. Draw a line across from the top of the circles and the bottom of the circles, and then trim out the extra lines. You may want to also work with assignment 6 first so that you can pick up a few more tools. I did create a video for that you can use so that you can follow along to create assignment 6. And then assignment 7 and 8 are smaller details to get the experience with what you covered and worked with in assignment 5 and 6. For assignment 8, I'd probably draw the circle that's 5-inch diameter. There are several different ways of doing this. And then draw a line from the center of the circle here out. And then I'd probably use rotate. If we use the rotate tool, you can start the rotate tool, select here this line that you drew, enter it, pick a base point here at the center of the circle, and then type in 22.5 and enter. Now we have also another diameter circle of 3, and then the smaller circles, I had to update that, are radius of 0.25. And now from here we can use the array command. There are a total of 8 circles,